Ghanaian prophet predicts Christmas flood. Ghanaian prophet Ibo Noah sparks viral debate with Christmas flood prediction and modern ark project. A self-proclaimed Ghanaian prophet known as Ibo Jesus, also called Ibo Noah, has gone viral on social media after predicting a catastrophic global flood set to begin on Christmas Day, December 25. The 30-year-old claims he received a divine revelation instructing him to build modern versions of Noah's Ark to survive what he says will be a 3-year non-storm deluge. Okay, now let's really get into this story on the AI podcast.
We're diving headfirst into a story that is, well, it's just wild. It's something that has captured millions of eyeballs worldwide. For months, we've watched this social media thing just unfold, a huge dramatic narrative that takes, the oldest apocalyptic story in the book and gives it a very modern, very immediate deadline.
Christmas Day.
Christmas Day.
That's exactly right. And for this deep dive, we're really pulling apart the sources related to Ibo Noah, a self-proclaimed prophet from Ghana.
Right.
Our mission here is to navigate the flood of information and, sorry, pun intended, to really get the mechanics of his apocalyptic prediction.
A second global flood.
A second global flood, how he's preparing with his modern ark project, and maybe most importantly, why this whole thing has triggered so much skepticism from, well, everyone, scientists, practical critics, theologians.
And what makes this so important for you, the listener, isn't just the prediction itself, right? It's how it traveled. It's this perfect storm, a textbook collision of ancient biblical myth, real religious fervor, and then just the rocket fuel of social media virality.
It's the TikTok effect.
Totally. It went from a local thing to a global news item in, a matter of weeks, all because of these platforms.
Indeed. And just to ground this, the central figure is Ibo Noah. He's sometimes called Ibo Jesus.
Oh, right.
He's described as a 30-year-old Ghanaian prophet. And his message that the world is facing, imminent destruction has resonated way beyond his own community.
Okay, let's unpack the details because the specifics are there's something else. So let's start with that core claim. Ibo Noah is predicting a catastrophic global flood, but the timing is what really makes this different.
It's the hook.
He says it's set to begin precisely on Christmas Day, December 25th.
And this is where the story shifts from just, a vague warning to a very high-stakes, organized survival plan. The sources emphasize this one precise detail he says he got from God. The rainfall would continue, not for 40 days and 40 nights, but uninterrupted. For 3 years.
3 years.
3 years of continuous rain.
That's the nugget that just changes everything, doesn't it? I mean, 40 days is survival mode. 3 years is building a whole new mobile society.
Absolutely. That duration, that 3-year number, is so critical. It's not a passing storm. It's a complete ecological transformation. It requires so much more than just writing it out.
Right.
Critics are quick to point out that a 3-year flood suggests, the total annihilation of all our infrastructure. It demands a massive organized survival strategy. The scale just goes up exponentially.
So why the modern arcs? What's the justification for building boats in response to this particular revelation?
Well, Ibo says the divine revelation came with specific direct instructions. He was told to basically replicate the biblical solution.
Build new arcs.
Build modern versions of Noah's Ark to survive this 3-year deluge. It's presented as an act of, total obedience, a repeat performance of the biggest disaster in the Old Testament.
And his instructions to his followers are just as theatrical, just as rooted in that ancient tradition. The preparation is all about this heavy, visible, dramatic imagery.
Yes. The sources detail a call to action that involves intense fasting, serious prayer, and a very specific focus on wearing sackcloth.
And for anyone who doesn't know, sackcloth is a big deal.
It's hugely significant. In the Bible, wearing sackcloth isn't just about wearing old clothes. It's a very specific, very public sign of repentance, mourning, deep lamentation.
It's what you do when doom is imminent.
Exactly. It connects his modern call directly back to the most intense apocalyptic stories of the Old Testament. It gives it this instant visual credibility for anyone steeped in that tradition.
The whole narrative is incredibly tightly linked, from the disaster itself to how you're supposed to prepare. But the story really takes off when the prophecy leaves the church and enters the construction yard. I mean, it's one thing to preach about it.
It's another to build it.
It's another thing entirely to achieve global viral status by documenting the building process.
And that's the defining part of this whole phenomenon. We aren't just reading about this in news reports. We're seeing raw footage Ebo himself is distributing.
All right, from his phone.
Right. His message just blew up, getting millions and millions of views on TikTok and YouTube, with videos uploaded directly from these construction sites in Ghana.
And it all really kicked off with that one key video back in August, right? The sources highlight that as the moment it went viral.
Yep. The one titled, "What Will Happen and How It Will Happen." That was the clip that went global.
It was such a high-stakes announcement, and then the visual evidence followed. He didn't just talk, he showed the work.
Right. Videos he shared show actual physical evidence. You see these wooden boats under construction. He claims he's built, or is building, around 10 of them.
And to complete that picture, the videos mirror the biblical story. They don't just show construction, they show livestock, goats, chickens, that sort of thing being gathered.
Echoing the whole 2x2 loading of the original ark. But this is where we have to pause and talk about scale, because the discrepancy is just staggering, and it's the immediate starting point for almost all of the practical criticism.
Right. If you look back at the original blueprints, so to speak, the biblical specs for Noah's Ark were enormous, a true feat of engineering. What was the comparison the sources made?
Well, the difference is the critical contrast here. The boats you see in Ebo's videos, I mean, they're vessels, sure, but they look pretty modest.
Okay.
When you compare them to the Genesis account, the absurdity becomes really clear. The original ark is described as being about 510 feet long.
That's over 1.5 football fields.
1.5 football fields long, 85 feet wide, and 51 feet tall. It was a colossal barge designed to house literally every species of land animal for months.
So we're talking about Ebo's vessels being, and this is generous, maybe the size of a fishing trawler, maybe smaller.
Maybe.
And these are supposed to survive a 3-year continuous global flood, as opposed to a vessel designed on the scale of a modern supertanker.
I mean, we are talking about a scale comparison that's like trying to cross the Atlantic in a glorified fishing boat. Except the voyage is 3 years long, and the entire planet is covered in turbulent water.
Yeah.
This immediately focuses that intense scrutiny the project is facing.
That scale difference is what leads us naturally, right, to the skepticism. So we need to transition now and really spend some time on the two main criticisms Ebo's claims have gotten.
The practical and the theological.
The hard, functional, scientific objections, and then the theological challenges.
So let's start with the practical critique, because that's often the easiest one to grasp. First, you have the meteorological consensus.
It is.
There is zero scientific or meteorological evidence supporting a 3-year global flood starting on Christmas.
Yeah.
Weather models, climate forecasts, I mean, nothing aligns with this.
But, okay, beyond the lack of science, what about the books themselves? I mean, if you're going to survive 3 years at sea, you need a real vehicle, not just a floating box.
And critics who've analyzed the videos, they raise really serious structural and functional concerns. The arcs just seem to be lacking critical elements.
Like what?
We're talking basic essentials for any kind of sustained maritime survival. Engines, steering mechanisms, rudders. There's also profound doubt about the structural durability.
They'd have to survive 3 years of constant storms.
Continuous turbulence, massive waves, structural fatigue for 36 months straight. The sources suggest the materials and the construction methods we see just wouldn't hold up.
And what about resources? I mean, even if the Ark floats, feeding and watering 10 boats full of people and livestock for 3 years, that's a logistical nightmare.
It's immense. The sheer demand for fresh water, preserved food, waste management, livestock care inside a tiny space for 3 whole years.
And where do you even keep all that?
Exactly. That's a detail that is completely absent from the footage.
And if we zoom out a bit, the practical critique also has a social side to it. We can't ignore the context of Ghana here.
Right. And what's fascinating here is that the social critique points to resource allocation. Critics have been really vocal about the fact that the effort and funds going into these boats,
which many see as basically useless.
which many view as structurally unsound and based on a non-scientific idea, could be so much better used to address immediate, verifiable poverty and infrastructure needs in local communities.
It raises a moral question about misplaced resources.
It really does.
Okay, so let's shift gears to the theological side, because this is where the prophecy runs into contradictions with the very scripture it's based on.
Right, and this critique is coming directly from biblical scholars and Christian commentators. It raises a really important question. Does Ebo Noah's prophecy violate core, established biblical doctrine?
And according to the critics,
The answer is a resounding yes. They point to a specific, unshakable promise in Genesis 9.11.
the famous rainbow covenant, let's spend a moment on that.
Yes, Genesis 9.1 is right after the first flood. It's when God makes a covenant with Noah and, all his descendants. God specifically promises, with the rainbow as the symbol, never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth.
It's an explicit, permanent promise.
It is, and the sources cite that as the central contradiction.
So the very precedent Ebo is using, the story of Noah surviving a flood, is the source of the promise that it won't happen again, by water anyway.
It completely undercuts the prophecy.
Right.
Precisely. If Ebo Noah is a prophet guided by the Bible, he's relying on a story that contains its own expiration date for that specific scenario.
Yeah.
And on top of that, many Christian interpretations suggest that while there might be a future final judgment, it's described not by water, but by fire.
A completely different concept.
It's tied to a different biblical eschatology, so it adds another layer of theological conflict. Ebo's vision seems to be repeating history, while the broader theological view says the next final judgment will be totally different.
Couldn't a counter-argument be that this is just a new revelation? That it supersedes the old covenant, that God is operating outside the strict rules of Genesis 9.11 for some modern reason?
And that is the argument supporters would use, that divine command can supersede written scripture. However, the sources note that mainstream theological commentators push back, and they push back hard on that.
Why?
They argue the Genesis 9 covenant is described repeatedly in the Bible as eternal and unconditional. So for Ebo's prophecy to be true, you have to accept that God has broken an eternal promise.
Which is an unacceptable idea for many Christian traditions.
Exactly. And that intellectual tension is what's fueling this whole global theological debate.
So we're left with this intense division as the clock ticks down to Christmas. On one side, you have supporters who see Ebo's preparations as this absolute act of faith and obedience.
Despite all the contradictions.
And on the other, you have skeptics who just see the whole thing as a high-profile viral hoax, a clear case of prophecy meeting overwhelming public scrutiny and just having no basis in reality.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, history is just littered with failed doomsday predictions, right? These things are common.
But this one feels different.
What makes Ebo's story different is the sheer scale of the viral attention it's gotten. This immediate global scrutiny means that the failure, if it doesn't happen, will be witnessed instantly by millions.
And the date, Christmas Day, just amplifies the drama. It's a day when the world is already focused on themes of hope and renewal. The contrast is just palpable.
And despite all the practical criticism, the lack of any meteorological evidence, the profound theological conflicts we've talked about, his followers are still hopeful. They continue their preparations right down to the sackcloth.
Yeah.
The sources show the momentum is being sustained purely by belief and the attention from those viral videos.
That sheer tenacity, that refusal to let go of the belief when faced with so much doubt and a looming deadline, it says a lot about the human need for certainty, doesn't it? Especially in uncertain times. So this deep dive has really explored a huge tension. The literal reading of a divine revelation demanding you build arks.
The practical limits and, the apparent lack of durability of those boats.
And the powerful, explicit theological counterargument found right in Genesis 9.11, the very covenant that guaranteed no more destruction by water.
What's truly fascinating here, and what the sources really reveal, is the mechanism itself. This immediate global debate shows how ancient prophecies, even ones that seem to be contradicted by the core texts, can be instantly modernized and get massive global reach.
Just through social media.
Purely through social media virality. As the clock ticks toward December 25th, the real question isn't whether the flood will come. It's what happens to the global social media ecosystem when it inevitably doesn't. And what does that immediate global fallout reveal about how we consume and react to high-stakes information about the future today?
Something to ponder as you prepare for the holidays. Thank you for joining us for this dive into the sources, and we really encourage you to explore the original material and the ongoing global discussion around Ebo Noah even further.
Last time it was 2012, and now in 2025. Let's see what happens. Okay, one question for you. Is there any scientific or meteorological evidence supporting a global flood on Christmas Day? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.